Hello, how's everyone doing? Today, I'm going to be talking about and explaining the Monarch of Wings, Ultimatia. So who is Ultimatia? Ultimatia is one of the primary antagonists of the manga and anime Ragna Crimson. She was the dragon monarch of the last winged bloodline. She was previously known as Carla number 19835, clone of the Solarian's dragon scourge Carla. So first, let's talk about her appearance and personality. Ultimatia has the appearance of a young woman with long, smooth, pale cyan hair reaching her shoulders, and her eyes are lavender, outlined by a light blue. She wears an emblazoned low-necked white robe and a pair of shoes with the same embellishment. She also wears a thick golden necklace, a golden bracelet with a red stone on her left arm, and sometimes a mid-air suspended large yellow crown. She has 2 pairs of pink angelic wings, one pair on the upper back, and the other one smaller on the bottom back. They're both exposed through dedicated gaps on her white robe. In her dragon form, Ultimatia becomes a white-haired long dragon without legs, with features on the head's sides, the arms, the lower section of the body, and on the tail. She still has 2 pairs of angelic wings. The bigger ones are detached from the body, while the smaller ones are located towards the bottom of the body. Her personality is also very troubling, considering Ultimatia is always joyous because she's serving the dragon god, and hardly something can change her state. Differently to all the other dragons from her bloodline, Ultimatia doesn't have a radical view of the humans and even feels compassion towards them. She doesn't hold back from killing them, but if possible, she wants to make sure they die in the least painful way. She deeply cares about her bloodline, with a particular bond with Walte Kamui, but it's the bloodline who takes more care of her, as she's a free spirit. Contrary to what her face shows, she's a twisted individual in her interpretations of her god, and she's particularly psychologically vulnerable because of her past. An aimed psychological attack or strong enough trauma can turn her powerless and unreasonable. Worse yet, she isn't compassionate to humans out of the kindness of her heart, but because she looks down on them and sees them as creatures to be pitied. So next, let's talk about her lore, including her past, present, and her future. Ultimatia, whose original name was Carla 19835, was born around the year 445 through an accelerated incubation because the Solarian 17th frontline was in dire need of new personnel for the war effort. The Carla clones assisted the wounded Solarians. They used their time magic to accelerate the natural healing process, and for extreme cases, they time-stopped these wounded bodies to be then reverted to a shortly before state where the accelerated healing was possible. But the time magic, even though it's only a fraction of the original user, consumed an immense amount of mana, so the cult prioritized their most devoted members, which often resulted in the death of the less devoted from even minor injuries. A year later, after starting to doubt the cult's practices, she witnessed the death of a senior Carla, which reached her operational limit by depleting her mana. Such an event triggered her divergence from the other Carla clones. In the year 448, Carla, now the most senior Carla present at the front line, met the Thunder Beast. The beast crashed through the fortress ceiling right above her. The collapse killed several Carla clones, sparing only her. She quickly recovered consciousness, but the Thunder Beast scared her, to which prompted her to run away. But she stopped from running away when she realized one of the other Carla clones survived the collapse. She tried to save her, but the Thunder Beast threatened to kill her, so she ran away terrified. But through her pent-up frustration of saving only the most devoted and meeting the first one who refused to recognize her status as Sanctus, she snapped. She went back, and after a rant, she used most of her mana to save everyone by rewinding time, the wounded beast too. She collapsed from the fatigue, and the beast tried to attack her for defying him, but he stopped before reaching her. He was now extremely annoyed that he owed a debt to her. The beast brought the unconscious Carla over to a nearby cliff to talk to her. When she woke up, she freaked out, but he calmed her down. He wanted to realize one wish for her to settle the debt, but Carla was confused by his request. As Carla wasn't able to come up with the real wish, the boy decided for her, based on her previous rant, that he'll make it so that she could save the people she wants to save by freeing her from her god. Around 8 years later, Carla and the Thunder Beast were captured by the Solarians. Years before, the Solarians saw in her an important asset because of her abnormal magical power and operation time, so she was put in charge of all the abnormal Carla clones, but it ended up with all of them going insane, which resulted in many front lines collapsing. The Solarians were forced to execute all of them. The cult took several years to link the Thunder Beast's actions to her because they suffered immense damage from the beast, so in the end, they used her as a bait and all the cult's resources to capture him. Carla, bowing to the ground, was looking back on where it all went wrong while waiting for her own execution. It took a moment, but she noted that time was stopped for everyone except her. Behind her, a being which took the resemblance of a young Carla presented itself as the Dragon God. It responded to Carla's prayer, and to her request of saving her and the Thunder Beast, the Dragon God nominated Carla as Ultimatia, the God's Wings, and granted her the power she wished for. Main timeline: the Fall of Lesse arc. The Dragon God was displeased when it learned of the closure of its favorite cake shop located in Dona Piero, Kingdom of Lesse, even though the Dragon God granted the dragons protection to the city. The Dragon God stated to Ultimatia that it didn't remember any place called Kingdom of Lesse. Ultimatia interpreted its words and planned to destroy the kingdom her way, without the humans suffering any pain or fear. But Walter Kamui rushed away and razed Dona Piero to the ground with no survivors, without her consent. She later punished him, but it was already too late, and chaos ensued in the kingdom. To avoid anyone from fleeing the country, she sent the 3rd, 8th, and the 10th bloodline seat to destroy the border cities and to occupy the borders. Meanwhile, she went to the kingdom's capital to seize it. She stopped time to avoid people seeing her. Then she presented herself to the king, who was the only one unaffected by her choice. The king was shocked why such a being was before him, and confused why she was unscathed by the solar shield. But she reassured him. The barrier was working, and she felt hot. The king then asked what the purpose of her visit was. She wanted to apologize for the destruction of Dona Piero, and as proof, she showed the severed head of the culprit. The king was confused by her actions, but he accepted her apology. Ultimatia then explained how she never intended to make people suffer and only wanted to eliminate all the humans painlessly. The king was baffled and demanded an explanation, to which she replied it was their God's will and that she already sent her subordinates to take care of the borders. The king, in despair, asked her to recall the attack, but she adamantly denied the possibility. This forced the king to use his ace card, the Aurora Beam. But before he could use it, he was hit fatally by his advisor, who was the bloodline dragon Borgias in disguise, all this time while Nebulum had already erected a barrier to protect Ultimatia. Borgias' attack left the king on the brink of death, but his body's state was restored by Ultimatia. The king, shocked by what just happened, went into a mental breakdown and allied himself with Ultimatia. She ordered through the mind of the king that all the survivors had to flee to the capital. Through the abilities of Nebulum, the citizens in the capital were erased silently and painlessly, so there was space for new citizens to come, and without anyone noticing anything. Several days later, on March 8th, masses of citizens were already arriving at the capital for days. Ultimatia went to the top of the castle where Walter Kamui was being punished for destroying the capital, by letting him be burned under the sun. She informed him that the 9th seat was killed by the 2nd princess of the country, the Silverware Princess. He then asked her if she wanted him to hunt her down, but she explains that the 5th and 6th seat have already been sent. Walter Kamui is confused to why then she approached him, and she further explains that the 3rd, 8th, 10th, and 13th seat were all killed near the southern border. Walter Kamui is surprised by the news, and questioned her who the culprit could be. To her, only the Sun Cult could have done it, but Walter Kamui noted that the work of another bloodline wasn't to be excluded. So he asked what was Borgias' opinion, and he referred that it could be a third party. Walter Kamui got all excited for the mysterious enemy, but Ultimatia reminded him to control himself after what he did previously. He got released from his punishment, and in a flash of lightning, he went to the southern border. Ultimatia reflected on her last meeting with the Dragon God, and how he proclaimed the end of the kingdom of Lesse, and how she is the tool for its downfall. She then shed tears for all the bloodline members who died and hoped the country's downfall could be considered an offering to their memory. Royal Capital Arc. While the human elimination was ongoing, Ultimatia walked around the city in disguise to help those who were in pain or fear. While she was helping a kid to reunite with his family, she met Ragna, who paled when he recognized her, but she mistook his reaction, thinking he was ill. Slime, who didn't realize the situation, intervened, explaining it was just sickness from being in a crowd. Shortly after, Slime realized that Ultimatia had a familiar smell and asked to have a taste of her. Ultimatia was confused, but Slime got in a dispute with the kid she was helping because the kid wanted to protect her from the creepy Slime. The fight stopped shortly after, and to a remark of Slime, Ultimatia explained she wasn't the kid's sister and was just trying to help him. Ragna asked her why she was so kind with a stranger, to which she replied why she shouldn't be. Ragna shivered a little to her response and walked away. But Ultimatia tried to stop him to know if they met before, but Ragna denied it. Meanwhile, Nebulum appeared because he was sent by Borgias, who was worried by Ultimatia's sudden disappearance. Nebulum asked who the figure she just talked to was, as he recognized him being a dragon hunter. But Ultimatia calmed him down, explaining it was her who stopped him because apparently he had crowd sickness. To her answer, Nebulum suddenly puked on the street and realized he had the same problem. So Ultimatia tried to help him immediately, but not before giving a last look to Ragna, who had already disappeared in the crowd. After the kid rejoined with his family, Ultimatia thanked Nebulum for helping her, even under his sickness. But to his words, she remarked she wasn't kind, but she did it only for her own satisfaction. Nebulum interrupted her and insisted she was very kind, to which Ultimatia felt grateful that at least one person didn't think she did it for self-gratification. Ultimatia asked if the kid's family was on the list of those who will be erased that day. Nebulum confirmed it, and she felt relieved because they'll not feel pain or fear. Ragna appeared behind Nebulum and explained to her the reason he was feeling sick was because he was lying to himself, and he felt ashamed by that. Ultimatia was confused by his statement, and shortly after, Nebulum fell to the ground, freezed by Ragna. Ultimatia understood that Ragna was the enemy after them, and tried to stop time, but Ragna was faster and cut her in countless pieces. She then reversed her body state while Ragna took the chance to prepare himself. Ultimatia tried again to stop time, but Ragna intercepted her again and smashed her in pieces. As she lost her brain, she entered in a default mode where all the mental faculties and feelings were simplified. When she tried to recover the body again, she also attacked Ragna through telekinesis, but it was useless as Ragna smashed through her attack easily. Ragna continued to smash her into pieces every time she had almost recovered her body. After 10 deaths and having moved towards the external districts, Borgias was able to intervene and used all he had to shoot Ragna from the palace, but he got killed by an unknown sniper who hit him with a sneak shot. Nebulum was able to survive Ragna's surprise attack and use a restraining barrier on Ragna. Ultimatia was grateful for Nebulum, who was giving her precious seconds to recover her body, and she further attacked Ragna by releasing dragons from her blood. But Ragna, in one instant, raised his power and smashed through her. Ultimatia recalled a conversation she had with Welte Kamui. The time she needed to cast the time stop is a fraction of a second, but to him and anyone as strong as him, that amount is enough to decide who lives and who dies. Thus, if anyone so strong appeared, she needed Welte Kamui there, but if he wasn't present, she would have to use her ace card. She had to learn to use it even in the most extreme conditions. From the little that remained of her body, she cast a time rewind. Time returned to before she met Ragna the first time, and she stopped the time at that moment. Ultimatia explained to the freezed Ragna that her ace card consumed so much mana that she very rarely used it. But she considered him such a threat, and now she wondered how she could dispose of him. Ultimatia wondered who Ragna was, as she recognized in him a bottomless hatred toward her, and she would like to know when she did something to him to get such hatred. But it didn't matter anymore to her, as he was going to meet his end soon. Ultimatia moved all the citizens, still frozen in time, away from the plaza, as she acknowledged that even when she was reduced to small pieces, Ragna still fought without endangering the citizens. While she was wondering about Slime's identity and if he was involved, she got suddenly scared when she saw Ragna's finger move slightly. She was perplexed because the time was still stopped, but shortly after a dragonified Nebulum intervened with a punch barrage against Ragna and Slime. As Ragna was hit, he was not able to move on his own, so Ultimatia was relieved and thought it was just her imagination. She stopped Nebulum because his arms were burning without him even noticing, and he realized it was caused by touching the remains of the kid that followed Ragna, Slime. Ultimatia recognized Ragna's prowess, as even after Nebulum's hits, he was almost unscathed. Because it was full day, they were unable to use their full power. Thus, she decided to use King Famud's ace card, as it will do more damage than a magic attack on him. After she ordered Borgias to prepare the attack, she and Nebulum moved away. But for the last moment, she noticed she felt an attachment, like she does for the members of her bloodline, but much weaker. She was sickened by it, because she felt it for the one who killed many members of her bloodline. She turned around and moved away. But shortly after, Ragna got up and jumped her, to her absolute surprise. She was dumbfounded, as she couldn't understand why her time magic didn't work on him. She tried to stop him with her magic flames, but it was useless. Nebulum noticed only at the last second what was happening and raised his best barrier, but even that didn't stop Ragna's rush. Ultimatia was terrorized by Ragna as she got cut into pieces. Nebulum grabbed what remained of her, tried to protect her with his body. Ultimatia was traumatized and unable to think what to do, and ended up lifting the time pause, but Ragna stopped at the last second as he started bleeding profusely because of his strain and collapsed. Nebulum held tightly Ultimatia and flew away while Borgias summoned Aurora beams and hit Ragna. To Borgias and Nebulum's disappointment, Ragna survived after an unknown figure, who was Crimson, intervened. Ultimatia was completely taken over by terror, and as a desperate move, she tried one last time to stop time, but before she was able to do it, Crimson triggered explosives hidden through the city filled with screams and cries of the survivors. Ultimatia, shocked by what just happened, tried to rewind time, but she got stopped by Nebulum because he understood that was what their enemy wanted. If Ultimatia used another time rewind, she would deplete all her mana. Ragna and the unknown figure disappeared in the city, filled by death under their eyes. In this desperate situation, Nebulum was forced by need to bring his best. He got a sudden growth spurt and started to search for their enemies. Ultimatia is surprised by this turn of event. He is able to suddenly find them in an isolated space dimension, and as he starts to force them out, he was hit by the sneaky sniper Golem. Nebulum saved Ultimatia at the last second from the shot and called for Borgias, who then eliminated the sniper in one hit. Even though he was severely wounded to the face, he continued to attack the isolated space, but then Ragna and his group suddenly disappeared from his senses. Escape from Lesay Arc. After the fight, Ultimatia retired herself into her room. She woke up from a nightmare and tried to use her time magic, but it didn't work to her desperation. Walte Kamui, who was already in her room, interrupted her and reminded her that one can't rely on powers given by others. But Ultimatia, who was surprised by his presence, whines on why he was in her room, even though she instructed Nebulum to not let anyone in. Kamui replied that she should punish Nebulum, as he disobeyed her. He refused to leave the room and showed a severed head he got while on his task. He admitted that, even though he was weak, the human fought bravely and he respected him. But Ultimatia refused to watch any more of the cheap show of someone who died painfully. Kamui then showed the silver sword he had, and it scared Ultimatia. He recognized the sword was made crudely, but it was filled with an immense amount of silver aura, and he needed to use all his willpower to grab it. Ultimatia kept insisting on him removing the sword from her view, but Kamui kept poking her until she snapped and used the sword to cut him. The simple swing of the sword cut through him and the room. Kamui, while laughing, reminded her she was grabbing the sword, and she dropped it after she noticed her hands had froze. Kamui explained the reason she wasn't able to use magic was because she lost confidence. One of the 3 elements needed to use magic. Ultimatia reminded him that Ragna moved even when time was stopped, to which Kamui was unable to explain, but he was sure on why she wasn't able to use magic now. She broke down crying and asked him what she should do now, and Kamui simply stated she needs to stop being afraid. She just needed to give him an order, and he would erase the source of the fear, but after a moment of hesitation, Ultimatia refused him. Her mission had priority over her personal feelings. Kamui was deluded by her answer and asked again what she really wanted. But Ultimatia was enraged by him, and after a short dispute, Ultimatia was convinced by him, and while crying, she asked Kamui to bring their heads to her. Ultimatia exited the room and met the other members of her bloodline who were worried by her. But she calmed them down, assuring it was all right now. The Sun Cult Arc. Ultimatia was inside the relic left by the previous winged monarch, Crimson, hidden inside the royal palace, and was praying to the dragon god to hear its voice again if she fulfilled her mission and slayed all her enemies. Borgias arrived shortly after, wanting to know if the dragon god revealed anything, but Ultimatia was surprised by his new look, now back to his prime. He admitted not even he was used to it. Ultimatia asked if their enemy will come, to which he declared the chance was high, as Altazora had already found many teleportation circles in the capital. Ultimatia asked how Zora was feeling, and Borgias revealed he wasn't in a good condition after the death of Tar Tectura, and he may never recover from it. Return to the capital arc. At the last second, Nebulum was able to warn Ultimatia of the threat before he was ate by slime. She avoided the bullet aimed to her, thus only grazing her, and she recognized Crimson as the unknown figure who saved Ragna previously. She realized the wound wasn't healing, but it didn't matter to her, as she was only scared of Ragna. She transformed into her dragon form and engaged Crimson. After several exchanged shots, one of Crimson's bullets was able to penetrate her barrier and wound one of her wings, making her fall. She landed on a pillar, and in rage, she shot magic all around her, relentlessly. Even though there was no gap where Crimson could exploit, he revealed he knew of her past, and that the dragon god takes the most favorable appearance from subject to subject. In her case, it was a young child, possessing her same face, representing the many sisters that died by her hands. Borgias was able to open a path inside the relic to let Ultimatia escape, but at the last moment, a sudden attack from Furby-God crushed everything. Ultimatia landed somewhere in the wasteland that was left of the capital when the Silver Army members attacked her. She easily killed some of them afar, but suddenly, Nazarena landed on her head and stabbed her. In pain, she again released magic attacks all around her, but the new transformation of Walte Kamui paralyzed everyone, and her included. When Kamui and Ragna crashed back down, they left an enormous crater. Ultimatia pleaded Kamui's help, but he shouted for her to stay out of his fight. His fight concluded with Kamui's death. In its last seconds, he tried to help her, but Ragna intervened and stopped him. Ultimatia, tearful, involuntarily stopped time. To the realization of her powers returning, she became joyous and tried to rewind time, but at the last second, she was shot several times by Hazela with Crimson's pistol. In her dying moments, she tried to plead the dragon god to save her again, like it did in the past, but no help was spared. As she laid at the mercy of the sun, she reached for Kamui's sword, which Shadow gave her relief in her last moment. Original timeline. Defeat of Ragna. 8 years after the fall of Lesse, the winged bloodline easily defeated Ragna, who tried to stop them from destroying another country again. Borgias asked each member of the bloodline their opinion on how to deal with the hunter, but Ultimatia intervened and suggested to let him join the bloodline because his continuous survival could only be the will of the dragon god. Ragna was confused by what was happening, but Grim Walte explained to him everything. The superior dragons were all originally humans, while all other dragons were spawns of their blood. Ultimatia proceeded with the ritual, but in the middle of the process, Ragna leaped towards what was left of his silver sword and stabbed his heart, thus denying Ultimatia's wish. She was disappointed and thought that perhaps she mistook his destiny. Shortly after, she ordered her bloodline to depart as they had more work to do. Unbeknownst to them, Ragna's body was recovered by Crimson. That was a long discussion about the lore of Ultimatia. So, without further ado, let's talk about her powers and abilities. First of all, she has the normal superior dragon physiology. Ultimatia holds all the basic abilities inherent to a matured, high-class dragon. Physical and magical powers at a vastly superhuman level, self-regeneration, the ability to project flames and explosions and to spawn lesser dragons from her blood, as well as transforming from her human form into a full dragon, the latter bringing out her full power. A single superior dragon is powerful enough to destroy entire armies of tens of thousands soldiers, this including immense strength and magic power. As the winged monarch, Ultimatia is one of the strongest superior dragons ever. Her magic power is so immense that she could freely manipulate the time stream of the entire world, even under the effects of sunlight. Crimson noted that Ultimatia has the biggest amount of magic power of all the monarchs. So much so that, despite being the weakest in overall combat power and ability among the dragon monarchs, Ultimatia more than makes up for it thanks to her absurd levels of magic power, allowing her to easily launch extremely destructive attacks numerous times without tiring. In the alternate future timeline, she's stated to have completely obliterated the country of Lesse from the maps. Immense speed. Ultimatia is fast enough to react against rifle bullets from relatively close range. And in her dragon form, she can also dodge Crimson's sunlight laser bombs from a distance. Immense durability. As a superior dragon, Ultimatia possesses great durability, superior to most of her bloodline members. Compared to the inferior species, the superior dragons have layers of resistance against anti-magic, like silverine weapons. Dragonification. As a superior dragon, Ultimatia can shift from her humanoid form into a much larger, fully realized dragon form. In this form, her stats are greatly boosted, alongside with her magic power. Telepathy and cosmic awareness. It is one of the common abilities of the dragons that allows them to transmit one's thoughts and feelings to another dragon at a distance without using other conventional means of communication. Enhanced silverine resistance. As a superior dragon, Ultimatia possesses increased resistance to argentum weapons and silverine. Dragon spawn. Lower and medium class dragons are born from their blood. Through aging and experience, these dragons can evolve into the far more lethal, mature dragons, which have human levels of intellect and are able to use their own creator's signature magic. As shown in the raid against the Argentum Core's base, Ultimatia's spawned dragon was able to single-handedly overwhelm the core and would have killed them all if not for Crimson's interference. Explosive blood. Ultimatia is able to project flames from her blood. She often uses it for offense or when irritated, as she used it on Walter Kamui when he was going through his punishment. Flight. Ultimatia can use her wings to float from off the ground or fly around as seen in episode 1 and a few other occasions. Dragon Monarch. A subject who has been chosen directly by the dragon god to follow its will, and as followers, they're the only ones who can communicate with it. As the Dragon Monarch, they can establish their own bloodline of powerful dragons, which will support their mission unconditionally. Blood Ritual. Through the use of a ritualistic blood dagger, blood is injected into the subject's body, transforming them into a superior dragon. However, their base power is entirely dependent on the individual themselves, as each member's potential is understood through the time period it takes for their body to undergo the transformation, granting them their seat and authority within the bloodline. Telekinesis. Ultimatia can physically move objects, people, or the terrain itself. Ultimatia can also use it to attack her opponent by making them explode from inside out or crushing their innards. Automated mode. Ultimatia is still able to use her magic even after her brain is damaged or destroyed by immensely reducing her brain's functions except for the self-defense. Immense mana capacity. Ultimatia holds an incredible amount of mana, greater than all the other dragon monarchs, which compensates for the weakest body amongst the monarchs. She can cast magic attacks in all directions non-stop without worrying about her mana reserve, making her a tricky target to attack directly. However, her immense mana capacity will be completely depleted if she uses her trump card to rewind the world twice, showing just how much mana it requires to use it. Danmaku. The ability to shoot a barrage of magic beams. Ultimatia's immense mana capacity allows her to spam these huge blasts of magic energy as much as she wants, as long as she wants. Crimson stated that just by blasting shots everywhere, Ultimatia can easily overpower most superior dragons. Time magic. Ultimatia is able to alter the flow of time to her will. You could think of it kind of like Dio from JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. Her time-related abilities include Heed Me, All Creation, and Fall Still. Time is stopped for everyone except specific targets of her choice, but it takes 1 to 2/10ths of a second to cast it, leaving her open to attacks before she could stop time. She's able to hold time for up to 30 minutes, and after a short break, for another 20 minutes. Heed me time, and return. A localized target's physical state is returned to a shortly before state. The target can even be herself, but it takes up to around 3 seconds to reverse the body's state relative to how much is damaged. Heed me, all creation, and return. Ultimatia's trump card. It rewinds time to a maximum of 10 minutes. However, this technique requires an extremely large amount of mana, so Ultimatia rarely uses it and can only use it 2 times before depleting all of her immense mana. Only those related to the Wing bloodline and those she chooses, or those versed in time magic, are able to keep their memories or partially keep their memories after she's rewound time. Time acceleration. It could be used to accelerate a specific target's natural healing, so even the deadliest injuries can be treated, as long as the subject is alive. Time immobilization. Ultimatia can seemingly stop time in individuals. She was seen doing it multiple times for Walter Kamui when he tried to do something brash. For example, he asked to get a kiss from Ultimatia as a reward, and he froze in time as she punched him. Also goes for when he was brutal with Ragna, wanting him to suffer, and suddenly he was stopped in time and was then decapitated by Ultimatia. Well, that's the end for this video. Make sure to like, subscribe, and comment down below.